Do you realize what you've just done? You've started listening to episode 24 of the Doofy Doo talk-through of Shiren the Wanderer. This episode, we are going to talk about winners. People who are interested in winning at all costs. And I used to play a lot of 2D fighters, as you know, so I'm very familiar with this type of person. We're also going to do some more of phase puzzles. We are getting so close to the final puzzle I can smell it. Here's another Bufu's staff puzzle. You can see that any monster that has double movement, like a Death Reaper, has very, very valuable meat. Because basically it's like every other enemy that doesn't have double movement is slowed down relative to you. So even though I'm too weak to really kill these powered up snakies very quickly, because I have double movement, eventually I'm going to lure them into this big room, and then I should be able to outmaneuver them. Just a disclaimer before I start critiquing killers. I should mention that when I talk about the 4 different methods of social interaction in gaming, or the 4 different types of gamers, of course, no one person is purely one type or another. Everyone shifts between different modes depending on the mood they're in and the game they're playing. So it's definitely possible to be an explorer in one game or at one time, and then a minute later behave like a killer. Your priorities can change from moment to moment. Speaking of killers, in this puzzle we're going to run into the enemy that causes my death the most number of times. It is a Lilac, and the Cyclops killer does extra damage to any enemy with only one eye. But you can see I'm intentionally gonna do this puzzle the wrong way to show you the dangers of picking up a cursed weapon or shield. And I'll go ahead and eat these herbs of life, give myself some extra life. Now in this puzzle, all the weapons and shields are ID'd, so I know that 2 of them are cursed. But when you find a weapon or shield in the wild, you don't know if it's cursed until you equip it the first time. So it's dangerous just to carry them out in the open. You can see these Lilacs made me equip the cursed Cyclops killer. And in this game, unlike the original, cursing removes any special effects on the item. So the cursed Cyclops killer is no longer doing extra damage to one-eyed enemies. I'm only doing 1 damage. And it's going to take forever for me to kill these guys, assuming they don't kill me first. This puzzle is also demonstrating that some items are actually better when they are cursed than when they are not cursed. Usually the fragile shield would lose strength every time you get attacked, but because it's cursed it lost that ability, which was a negative ability. So a cursed fragile shield is actually a pretty good shield to have at the beginning of the game. It's really strong. You can see it's remaining at -1. Similarly, an armor ward, a cursed armor ward, doesn't reduce your hunger quickly like a regular armor ward would. So a cursed armor ward also a pretty good shield to have in the beginning of the game. Later on, of course, you have to remove it. Alright, I thought I could make it around this last Lilac, but nope, looks like it's not gonna happen. I don't have a lot of different items, and these are low-powered Lilacs, so this death dance isn't gonna be very interesting. But when you have a lot of different items, and you're fighting high-powered Lilacs or Degeneri, your little death dance you do as they hypnotize you is pretty hilarious. If you just start throwing things randomly and equipping things and eating herbs. The funniest Lilac death dance I ever had happened after a Roid kitty threw one into me from across the room. I equipped the pitcher's armband, threw away a melding jar, and then ate an herb of revival before it actually killed me. Oh, it was traumatic but amusing to watch. This one is going on forever. I'm hoping that maybe I'll be able to actually luck out and oh! No. I don't think I'm going to make it out before they kill me. This could go on for quite a while though. My health is regenerating. Oh! No, I thought I was going to get out for a second. I like how they picked the most annoying sound effect ever to accompany hypnosis. Finally, the sweet release of death. So now that we're dead, let's think, how could we avoid that in the future? Well, there are a couple different things you can do. If you have a jar and you find an unID'd shield or weapon, It's generally a good idea to stuff those into a jar before you go onto a floor where there are lilacs, because then there's no risk of you accidentally equipping something that's cursed and ruining your run. Another way is to load up on herbs. So you see when I'm getting hypnotized now, I'm actually eating my herbs. It's because there are more beneficial options for me when I get hypnotized because I'm carrying all the herbs. If I didn't have the herbs, if I ate them, then I would probably be equipping my cursed items. And a final method, of course, the smartest thing to do would be just not to pick up the cursed items once I know they're cursed. So I'm going to put these on the ground so the last guy can't make me equip it. There we go. And this puzzle is done. Alright, before we start talking about killers, it's important to note that because I am an explorer, I phrased my description of explorers in a positive way. I make it seem as though, oh, you know, explorers are interested in the objective truth, but no one else is. That's not really true. Every method of social interaction has its own truth. They're all looking for the truth. It's just the way they define that truth and the way they look at the world is different. So, hey, I'm still alive. For an explorer, the truth is to be found out in the world. They just want to objectively observe and catalog everything. They're almost like a floating camera. For someone who is a killer, for someone who is interested in winning, the truth is focused more on people and society as opposed to just the natural world. Hey, die, Fluffy Bunny. I got to kill a Fluffy Bunny before the end of that puzzle. So it's not about passively observing the environment. For a killer, it's about actively exerting control over other people. And even more specifically, it's about establishing some kind of hierarchy of dominance based on a set of rules. And because my background is in 2D fighters originally, it's impossible to talk about people who are interested in winning without mentioning David Sirlin, who has a very excellent site and wrote an article and a book called Playing to Win. David Sirlin is actually kind of half winner, half explorer. He is interested in winning, but he understands the importance of being experimental and playful in a training situation as well. The difference is that he is exploring in order to win, and I would say the reverse is true for me. I win a game in order to be rewarded with more exploration. Now, it's important to remember that most of David Sirlin's ideas about playing to win are meant to apply to a very specific situation of a competitive game at the highest levels of play. His basic philosophy is that if you are playing a competitive game and you are trying to improve, you should be playing to win. You shouldn't be playing to impress people, to be admired. You shouldn't invent rules that aren't there just to be honorable. You aren't even playing to entertain the people that are watching. You are just playing to win. That is the measure of your ability as a gamer. If the tournament rules allow you to use a character that most people think is overpowered or high tier, of course you should use that character. If you can win by using the same attack over and over, go ahead and win using that technique. It doesn't matter if it's boring or not entertaining to people watching. The important thing is that you're going to win. And if there's a bug that doesn't crash the game and it's allowed by the tournament rules, then go ahead, take advantage of that bug. Again, the whole point of a tournament is to win at all costs. Now, this philosophy makes sense to people who are interested in winning, to killers, because the ultimate truth for them is that ranking, that tournament ranking. If you are number 1 ranked, then that means you are the most highly skilled in a game. Nothing else really matters. For someone like me, though, that philosophy doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm kind of a jack-of-all-trades kind of person. I like to achieve a certain level of competence when I'm doing things. Oh, the tiny D-pad strikes again. I meant to just take one step. Maybe I can dig my way out of this. Let's see. I got 1 charge left. Oh no, I'm not gonna make it. But yeah, once I achieve a certain basic level of competence, I lose interest. So I'm not really interested in reaching the highest peaks of performance in a certain area. And I guess that's to my detriment. Maybe I should really focus on one area, but I'm just incapable of doing it. I get bored. Not surprisingly, I have never risen above the level of scrub in 2D fighting games. I have played Ricky Ortiz and John Choi in casual play, and they completely demolished me. Although I did make John Choi pause thoughtfully after I nailed him with a Desperation Super. That was like the highlight of my gaming career. It was amazing the way he picked apart my corner trap though, almost immediately. But despite my eternal scrubbiness, I always had a lot of fun playing 2D fighters. It's tied for my favorite genre along with roguelikes. And I think it's because even though I wasn't obsessed with winning, I was obsessed with surprising my opponent. I love the mind games in 2D fighters. I love showing someone something they've never seen or pulling off some technique that they weren't expecting. That moment when they're like, oh, you know, this guy knows what I'm thinking. That's my favorite moment in any kind of competitive game. I'm not super competitive, but I guess I'm sneaky, I guess would be the word for it. That's why I love using low tier or underutilized characters. Alright, in this puzzle we're learning more about meat. Dark owl meat has the same effect as a scroll of light, and you don't wake up any sleeping enemies because owls can walk so quietly. Unfortunately, in this game, owls cannot fly, so I'm gonna have to revert in order to make it across this little creek. I'll have to switch. I probably don't want to switch with the guy in the middle though, huh? Because then you're gonna attack. I can switch with the guy on the right. And then I have all kinds of options in this puzzle. I got 2 more Bufu staff and staff of postpone. I'll just do it the safe way, postpone these 2 guys. I said before, postpone plus switching is unbeatable. So I'm gonna switch with the guy on the staircase, and there's nothing he can do. That technique is very, very important. It's my go-to technique in Phase Final Puzzle. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I think I was obsessed with being tricky and getting inside the head of my opponent. That's the most important thing to me in a competitive game. So, even though I'm not a winner or I don't get into the killer mode when I'm playing games very often, I do like 2D fighters a lot, and I like the exploration they offer. And I think it's worthwhile and interesting to compare the 2 genres, 2D fighters and roguelikes. Because even though they're very different, 2D fighters tend to attract killers naturally, and roguelikes tend to attract explorers. I feel like there's a lot of overlap. Oh, speaking of killers, that tank just leveled up 3 times to a cranky tank. Cranky tank is probably the most dangerous enemy in the entire game, unless you have Airdevil meat. They can always get to you. They have double movement and double attack, and they do a set amount of damage, so cranky tanks. I played 2 sports growing up. I played football and I also ran track. In a lot of ways, 2D fighters remind me of football, and roguelikes remind me of running track. Obviously, as with football, playing a 2D fighter is a competitive experience. Winning is everything. It doesn't matter if you know more rules or more obscure plays. That information can help you, of course, but it's not the final goal. The final goal is to win. It's not that essential to actually learn as you're playing. In contrast, playing a roguelike, like running track, is not a competitive experience. You're just challenging yourself to get better as you run through a course. Winning is not that important. You're gonna lose, but the most important thing is that you learn and improve every time you do a run. Playing a 2D fighter is fast-paced. You need expert timing, you need technical skill. That's something I was never very good at. You need to be consistent when you pull off a special move. You're always on. It's a short period of time, but you can't lose focus. You need to be constantly thinking about what you're doing. Playing a roguelike is more contemplative. There are long, slow periods where you're not really worried about anything, and then those are interspersed with brief moments of intense activity where you do need to focus. And those moments can happen at any time, so you need to be ready for them. But as I said, in a turn-based roguelike like Shiren, you really don't have to have a lot of technical skills as far as performing techniques with the actual controller. People who play 2D fighters are obsessed with having a level playing field. They want all the outcome to be based on individual skill. I remember the incredible outcry over tripping in Smash Brothers. But people who play roguelikes expect a little bit of randomness. There's going to be some luck involved. Some runs are going to be easier than others. And that's just something that you have to deal with. Now, I was decent at football and I was decent at track, but I never really liked playing football because I'm not a competitive person. I mainly enjoyed playing football casually, even though I was on the football team. But I did enjoy running track, and I stuck with it. I stayed on the team much longer, and I think it's because, like a roguelike, when you run track, the focus is on individual improvement. It's not really that important who wins the race. The important thing is that you see your times getting better and better as you improve. Alright, this shop has a happy armband, and I could put it on and run around in the shop and gain some levels, but I don't think that's the way to beat this level. I can only afford a dragon herb though with the money I get from the pickpockets. Oh no, now it's a Daster tank. I guess I'll have to use the dragon herb to kill the Daster tank before it kills— oh! The dragon herb's just gonna level up this guy. No, there's another one. Oh wait, I remember. I'll just eat the victory herb, of course. I think I said in a previous episode that the victory herb makes you invincible for 10 turns. It's actually 20 turns. I don't know why I said 10. But I remember this puzzle now. I can use everything in here, and because I have the victory herb, I won't take any damage from anybody, including the shopkeeper, who would normally just completely annihilate me. Alright. Yes, I will enjoy. Here come the dogs. You can see as soon as I make a step outside of the original shop, the shopkeeper starts attacking me because he correctly concludes that I'm trying to steal his stuff. But, yeah, still got plenty of turns left. So, finally remembered how to do that puzzle. You'd think I would remember that from the first time. Strange. Okay, now that I've put up some token resistance and contrasted 2D fighters and roguelikes, I do have to admit that they share a lot of common ground, and a lot of the ideas that David Sirlin talks about are applicable to roguelikes. One of the ideas is the idea of slippery slope, the idea that if you get behind early in a game, it's impossible to recover. It's very difficult to make a comeback. And this is true in a game like StarCraft. I played StarCraft like every kid in the 90s. But if you get behind early on in the game in StarCraft, a lot of people just GG because it's very, very difficult to come back once the other person starts getting more resources than you and they have more units than you. 2D fighters don't really suffer from slippery slope. I remember a match in CVS2 when I was using King. She was my last character, ratio 1. I think a single Fierce Punch would have killed me. I had almost no health left. And I actually came back and defeated all 3 of the other guy's characters without getting hit. And he was a scrub, of course, but it's always possible to make a comeback in 2D fighters. Not easy, but it's possible. I've already gone over the ability of a roguelike player to come back from a situation in which death seems certain with the help of just one item, and I guarantee that'll happen sometime in this talk through. Alright, here we see the bolt reflecting capabilities of the Air Devil. I'm gonna man smack myself. Oh wait, that didn't sound very good, did it? Uh-oh, I need to make it to that sword before the walruses steal it. I'll go ahead and postpone this one. There we go. I think I can beat the other one to it. Wait a second. There's another item down there. Oh well, this is the third rarest sword in the game, the homing blade. Not powerful, but it never misses. So you can imagine if you can meld that ability onto a weapon, it makes the game much more relaxing because you never have to worry about your weapon missing. And a lot of enemies can kill you with one attack, so it's very important that you actually know that you can attack it. Alright, a bunch of mini robbers. They're pretty weak. I've got this homing blade, so I can kill them all with one hit without worrying that they will ever get an attack in. Another thing that 2D fighters and roguelikes share is the idea that the character has all of the abilities they're gonna have at the very beginning. It's not like you unlock certain special moves in a 2D fighter. That means that even the highest ranked player in the world is using the same character that you're using in a 2D fighter, and that's a cool feeling, you know? It's, of course they're much more technically skilled than you, but it's not like their character has more abilities than yours. Similarly, in a roguelike, even though the levels are random, Shiren doesn't gain any more abilities as the game goes on. He just finds more items, but he can throw and use items from the very beginning of the game. So really it's just the learning process, learning the capabilities of the character, as opposed to accumulating a bunch of abilities by pumping in some time like you would in an RPG. Another key similarity between roguelikes and 2D fighters is the importance of positioning and controlling space. Of course, in 2D fighters, the process of controlling space is a lot more dynamic, but you can see in this puzzle even that it's very important that I use the Great Hall Scroll when my positioning is correct. Otherwise, these giant enemy crabs are gonna be able to kill me before I can reach the stairs, or they'll miss me. I don't really remember where the stairs are in this level. Oh well, I'll find them eventually. 2D fighters and roguelikes also share the philosophy of playing to learn. When you're not playing to win in a 2D fighter, it's important to spend some time just messing around and experimenting, and that's how you usually find out some kind of new technique, and don't waste your time perfecting some technique that's eventually going to be made obsolete by someone else who is willing to be more experimental. And just like you have to accept that you're going to lose sometimes in a 2D fighter, you have to accept that you're going to die in a roguelike. And that the important thing is to die well, to learn something when you die, so that next time you'll be even better. You can see in this puzzle that every time I'm dying, I'm eliminating one area of the map as a possibility for where the stairs are. I can't believe I haven't found them yet. And finally, roguelikes and 2D fighters share the idea of the critical moment. The moment when the entire game hangs in the balance and you really have to focus on what you're doing. And I think that's the most important similarity between the two genres. And one of the main reasons I love both of those genres. I love those tipping points, those moments where the entire game hangs in the balance of one decision. That happens a lot in roguelikes, and it happens a ton in 2D fighters. Nope, the stairs aren't down here either. Well, now that I've gone over some of the differences and similarities between 2D fighters and roguelikes, I think we can use that information to figure out how to alter roguelikes in order to attract killers, attract people who are interested in winning. Because I think it's important to have a mix of gamers in a certain genre. You don't want to only attract one type of gamer. Obviously, the first step is to introduce some kind of multiplayer element. Shiren has a score system, but the score system doesn't really correspond to one's skill in the game, and it's easy to break the score system by getting the max, so that really doesn't do anything. You really have to have a multiplayer roguelike. And as soon as you make that decision, it's almost necessary to make it real time. If you have a turn-based multiplayer roguelike, Shiren 3 for the Wii showed that is extremely tedious. Making one turn, then waiting for the other person to make one turn. You take a step, they take a step. Takes forever. So you really have to have a real-time roguelike as soon as you make the decision to go multiplayer. The next decision is first person or third person. I think it should be third person. A lot of the humor in a roguelike comes from you watching what's happening to you, what the other characters are doing to you. And making it third person also avoids the risk of people assuming that it's going to play like a first person shooter, which it can't. The focus of the game should be on creative use of a wide variety of items as opposed to technical skill and just pure aiming. One of the key balancing issues when making a game like this will be to keep things a little crazy, to maintain that sense of randomness, that sense of ridiculous things happening and random traps and random items, while at the same time making sure that skill is important, that if you are skilled and creative in the use of your items, you're rewarded for it. You end up surviving more often than not. And I don't know if killers will really be able to sacrifice that feeling of being on a level playing field in favor of craziness. Smash Brothers would seem to suggest that no, they don't want craziness, they just want pure skill-based gameplay, at least at the high levels. But honestly, that doesn't concern me a lot. I'm not interested in starting some kind of tournament or even having a ranking system, although that does attract killers. I just want the game to be fun enough and skill-based enough for killers to enjoy coming in and defeating other people. Not too long ago, I would have said that it was impossible to make a compelling, real-time roguelike with broad mainstream appeal because of the difficulty of item management and purse rummaging on a typical controller or a keyboard. But with the advent of a system like the Wii U, or any system that has a touchscreen on the control pad, oh no, so close and yet so far, one step away. Oh, he missed! I'll take it! It's not the real solution, but I'll take it. Winning is everything after all. Yeah, Zombie U showed that purse rummaging in real time can be compelling, and that game was flawed, but it did it well. So, I'll go ahead and stop now. Next week we'll talk about how to attract achievers to roguelikes. Ooh, I can't wait. I'll see you next week. I'm just a guy who likes roguelikes. I also used to play fighters. Sometimes I talk about gamers and how they communicate. So yeah, I want to hear your secrets. And yeah, I want to tell you mine. But no, I'm not hyper-competitive. Although yeah, I do win some of the time. Tell me about that bug. Weird bugs in a game almost always interest me.
Finally, the sweet release of death.